Hi, it's John Giss.
And DeDe Brown.
Welcome to episode 6 of Black on the Scene, a show about our love for all things Black entertainment. As you all know, DeDe and I met back in 2014 working on a film called Get On Up, starring Chadwick Boseman.
Yes, it was the beginning of not only our beautiful friendship that has lasted this long, but also we were introduced to this wonderful world of multicultural marketing in film and TV.
So this week's episode will focus on just that, the beautiful space of multicultural marketing. DeDe and I both bring a wealth of knowledge as we've worked on some truly impactful projects over the years. We take a moment to discuss the importance of getting it right and the desire to always be authentic when speaking to audiences of color.
This is super special to me, and I hope that you all enjoy it as much as we enjoyed making it, and maybe even learn a thing or two. So let's get into Black on the Scene, Multicultural 101. All right, let's kick it off. Set it off on the left, y'all. Set it off on the right, y'all. Set it off. Set it off.
What are we doing?
I don't know, but we're back with Black on the Scene.
That's actually should be it. Black on the Scene. You always hesitate.
Because I really want to emphasize scene.
That's very Oprah-esque of us to sing out something.
So true. Shout out to Oprah.
Shout out to Oprah.
She
Queen
gets
O.
Yes.
Love you.
Love you. Thanks for all the inspo over the years. Little known fact, John. When I was in high school, there was a media course, broadcasting, and I used to deliver the news with my friend Dennis every morning, and I also was the reporter throughout the school. I think you did the same thing, which is why
I was going to say, this is scary because I did the same thing.
And at the time, Oprah was just coming up, and there was nobody else Black on TV.
What year was this?
Are you trying to shame me? This may or may not have been the late 80s when Oprah was coming into her.
Well, I may or may not have been born.
Correct. That's the mid 80s.
Give or take a few years.
Yes, I may or may not have been in high school the year you were born or going to high school. But
that's another episode, honey. Oh gosh. It is.
But I was always referred to as like baby Oprah, right? Oh yeah, it was so. First of all, we'll have to pull out some of the pictures when my hair was.
We should do a side by side.
I mean, I was probably a little chubbier in the cheeks, all of that. But yeah, she is. We can do a whole podcast episode dedicated to her. Woo!
Yeah,
she's amazing.
She's amazing. Yes, she's amazing. We love.
But this podcast episode is dedicated to
a very special topic that we live and breathe every single day.
It pays the bills.
It pays the bills. Yes, it's our passion. Marketing for film and TV, and we both have different and similar experiences because we've worked on the studio side, we worked on the agency side. You've freelanced and contracted a number of years, so there's a wealth of knowledge between the two of us about marketing, and specifically marketing to Black audiences.
Well, again, I may or may not have been in field marketing when the studio you work for had a field office in Atlanta in the late 90s, and The Best Man was one of the first movies, and actually I think the first Black movie I ever worked on.
Wow.
Yes, I have to dig the picture up of me, Taye Diggs, and Malcolm D. Lee.
You have to do that. You have to find that.
I mean, John, lucky for me, I look younger and better now than I did then. So I
want to mostly just see the fashions of what you were wearing in the late 90s. What Levi's jean? Maybe an overall. What were you giving? What were you giving?
An overall, a bang, a straight hair. It was
everything oversized, I'm sure. Yes,
including me. I was a little oversized in the late 90s, early 2000s.
And but the crazy part about that is you talk about working on The Best Man. My first multicultural project was The Best Man Holiday that I worked on in my career, which is crazy.
Basically what you're saying is you are my son. You are my marketing.
I literally follow your every footsteps apparently in my career, which is so great.
You're my marketing multicultural son.
And I remember this story because that's when Ally Moxie, which is a division of Ally, where they were focusing on African American marketing. That was one of our first films, and I was meeting a client for the first time at the Bronner Brothers hair show. And I remember meeting, everyone was like, Talitha is very detailed, and Talitha Watkins is very this and that. I was like, I was so like nervous because I was like, I didn't want to get it right. And that was really my first time also like leading my own campaign and activation. And we had this big presence at Bronner Brothers that year. And we had Sanaa Lathan, Morris Chestnut, and Regina Hall came in town. And when I tell you, I was the most nervous little Black boy ever. This is like what, 2012, 13 maybe? Yeah. And I just was like, oh my God, I don't want to mess up. I just remember Talitha always tells the story. She's like, you just came up to me and you said, here, Talitha, here's your folder. And it just had every detail, schedule, run of show. And she's like, ever since then, I knew you were going to be special. And I was like, oh, thank God. My OCD came in hand.
And can we just raise a glass to Talitha Watkins?
Yes, love her.
Legendary. We learned so much from her. You on starting with Best Man Holiday, me with Get On Up. We talked about her, I think, in our first episode.
Yes.
Hopefully she'll be one of our guests.
Yes, she will. We will be. She brings a lot of experience and a lot of nuggets to the idea of marketing and getting it right too. So let's dive in. I'm really excited to dive into this, DeDe. Like there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of favorite moments. How should we start? Like, what's the first step of all this?
Well, I think it's, one of our favorite things to do is brainstorm.
Mm-hmm.
I love a brainstorm. I love it more probably than anything, any process in the whole movie marketing or multicultural marketing process, or any process really. I love the brainstorming process. And that's, of course, presuming you've been delivered with, all the things that you would need. You've got a great synopsis already. Ideally, there's a trailer or you've seen the film, but often on the agency side, and often too in studio side, you haven't seen the movie at the beginning of these processes, right?
Yeah.
So it really is taking, the concept of it, looking at the cast, the crew. Now they're calling them crafts, but below the line. So your director, producer, writers, all of those elements that sort of make up the film, the tangible product. And then that brainstorm process. And I like to we referenced her, I think, in our first podcast as well. And that was Erica Bennett, I learned so much from Erica Bennett when we started at Moxie about the whole brainstorming process and allowing for ideas to flow and not shutting people down by saying, what do we say, John?
Yes, and. Yes,
and.
Yes, and. Yes.
Yes, and that to me is the most fun part, just thinking about the possibilities, piggybacking off of each other, really just letting your mind go wherever it can. And then you can always just sort of rein it back in, which often you have to do according to budget, talent availability, all of that, right?
I mean, yeah, I think back to like when we were at the agency side of just like, it's always like, just think big, think out of the box, and think, it's all these parameters. So it's like, but to your point, it's like sometimes you may just have a trailer to reference. Sometimes you just may just have a download from your client. Sometimes you may not have seen it, but there may be some key themes, cast, etc., that you have to lean into. So for, the idea of the Fast and Furious franchise, that is a movie that is very, very big on the idea of family and what that means and what it's looked at and how it's evolved. So like, that's always a pillar for us. And like, how do you lean into that being that it's a franchise, being that there's been multiple films, like how do you lead into that, still make it feel fresh and new, and like so people can still want to go see it. So I always think that, like, back to all of our amazing brainstorm sessions we would have, and again the whole idea of yes and, but like the yes and was a bridge to something else, that was a bridge to something else, that was a bridge to something else, and it was like you kept going and going and going and going. So brainstorming is really, really important. And again, it's like no idea is a bad idea. It's just yes and, like, oh, that's great, but like what if we did it this way, or what if we did it that way? So I love that idea. And I think that's also an opportunity, especially on the agency side, where we got to not just be publicists, but we were marketers, and we were event planners, and we were talent handlers, and we were strategists, and we were all these other things on top of just being like just the agency. You know what I mean? Like I feel like sometimes there's a connotation about like just an agency just does the work, but we also we're boots on the ground. We're so many other things during that period when we were doing that stuff, that it contributed to the greater larger picture of just a marketing campaign.
And what's so great about that whole concept, again, of brainstorming early, trying to figure out your strategy, trying to figure out your jumping off point, your target audience, but also your secondary audience, who's this content for, is you really never quite stop brainstorming on a campaign, because it's a living, breathing thing.
Yeah.
It really is. You get it set up in a place where you think is good, but wow, can a filmmaker throw a monkey wrench into a plan, or can they?
Yeah,
yeah they can.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I think what you said too about audience, I think is very important. Like really just knowing what your audience is, and I think that's from a demographic perspective, that's from an age perspective, that's from a regional perspective. There's a lot of different ways that you can look into that. But I think for me working at a studio, we're very much informed about strategy based on what we have from research. Like, how are people reacting to this piece of content, right? So research is a really kind of a jump start to it all, because that's kind of like, obviously we know if it's a Will Packer film, or there's, for instance, Queen and Slim, obviously there's a heavily African-American there, but African-American is very broad. So what does that also mean? Like, how do we break that down? Are people 16 and up resonating with this content? Is it rated R? So that means we have to go 18 and up. Is there an angle for college there, young adults, women, males? Like, there's so many ways and entry points of doing that. So research helps us and equips us with the right tools to kind of take it to that next level, to like, okay, we're brainstorming. So what are we brainstorming about, and who are we trying to get as we're brainstorming?
I would also add, and I'm learning this more being in the studio system now, that along with research, the analytics of what is social chatter, where's that coming from? Is there something specific about, or very niche, specific and niche about the region that it's coming from? Right. So again, we often think of African-American or Black, or those in urban is all interchangeable. But I think that there's opportunity. As Southerners, everyone thinks of Atlanta as that touch point for Black, Southern, cosmopolitan, but also Southern. So Atlanta ticks many boxes in terms of a city, the DMA, the Black folks that live there. Again, shout out to Atlanta. That's a whole nother podcast, is Marketing Atlanta.
Yeah.
Woo! I love that city so much. It gave me a lot. It continues to give me a lot. Gave me you. Yeah. Gave me someone else we both know and love.
Yeah.
But the analytics are so important in finding out, especially that social sentiment. So now that we're able to, again, look at when that announcement is made, did it light Twitter up? Is Black Twitter for it or against it? Yeah. And it may be, I would argue that it's better to know, it's better to have them maybe against it than agnostic on it. Like, if nobody's talking about it, should we be making this?
Yeah. Right. You want a little conversation. You want some conversation, not even a little. You want some conversation about
you want chatter. And that could start as, well, I would like to just use an example of something that I was not, because I guess I wasn't super social media savvy, nor am I super social media savvy right now. But Zola, that
Oh
whole
yeah.
Zola story being extracted from what was going on Twitter, and that trailer that they dropped,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
cannot
Yeah.
wait.
I just think back to, I think there's so much opportunity because it was a film that literally was derived from social media. So I think there's so much to do in that space. Which I think is like, it's such an interesting narrative within itself. So I think A24 can really be creative on their approach. And again, I think that trailer, like you said, was it pulled you in.
It
Um, it,
did.
it pulled you really, really in, and I think it felt on the right tone. It felt right. You know what I mean, for that project.
It did. Shout out to A24 because
Yeah.
they know how to, they really have some compelling and interesting content.
Mhm.
I mean, they're really great storytellers.
Yeah.
And little known fact, I have a mentee that works in like field publicity at
Oh,
A24.
I didn't know that. Oh, nice.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And I've had the opportunity to work on a couple of A24 movies, Waves and
Hmm.
oh my gosh, the one with Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gemini. Not Gemini. Wait.
no, that
Jim.
was
Jim.
Jim's. It, oh,
Isn't it something with Jims?
yes. Why am I blinking on this?
I was like, wait.
Could it be the second glass of rosé I've had today? But then back to, I mean, I think there's something worth it to cite specific examples of, as we're mentioning, and we talked about A24, but specific examples of content that we've worked on where we felt like, okay, out of this, brainstorm, because we were in the brainstorming phase and moving on about the research and analytics and niching down on that audience. And I have to give shout out to you and the multicultural team over at Universal. But certainly you guys did that just supremely well on Us. Us is still in the zeitgeist, the marketing zeitgeist of the chatter, the audience, the everything that you could possibly imagine. That multicultural campaign and the campaign overall is
Yeah.
legendary. If one more person mentions the Us elements, I'm like, get alive. And of course, Queen and Slim, which I did have a small part of both of those movies.
You were my minion on both of those.
Yes, I was gonna say John's minion. He rode me hard and drove
You
me
were my minion, and I appreciate you following me across the country in both of those films.
putting up easels in the hot behind sun. Let's see, what else did John?
But but thinking back to like Queen and Slim, I just always remember in the beginning when I read that script for that movie, of like what this movie is going to be and what it's going to stand for. And this was a Black film created by Black amazing females, and they were very, very, very passionate about making sure their content was being presented the right way. And I never really had worked with a filmmaker to that degree where they were so hands-on, like when Lena Matsukas and Lena Waithe. And I loved it. It was so great because it was just like, it felt like collaboration. It felt like a partnership. It felt like really good. And there was so many conversations, they trusted us and I trusted them. And it just was a really good relationship that was built. But it was always from the idea from day one that this is going to be for us, by us. And whoever jumps on board, then they jump on board. But like, this is for my Black folks and I want to tell this Black story. And that is what it is. And that was what we did with that campaign from the moment of launching the trailer at the BET Awards to just being at every specific Black cultural event that could happen. We took this movie to schools and HBCUs. We took this movie to New York. We had a salon screening. We did some Atlanta presence from a music angle. So it just was like really figuring out ways and what that entry point was, like taking the movie there. And again, it was always about like Black. And I love the idea of that. Like that to me was magical. And then at the premiere, every Black celebrity that you could think of was there. I mean, from Beyonce to Solange to Rihanna to Zendaya. Like, I mean, it was like a who's who, and they supported the film and they believed in what those two women did. So I just think that's when you do get it right. I mean, that's just the magical part about it.
It was magical to witness from the small POV that I had. Obviously, I wasn't on the day-to-day, but certainly being a part of that very magical essence first.
Yes, essence, yes.
First 12 minutes. One of the minion things I had to do for Jon folks was to run around hot New Orleans getting tickets for talent, and it was
DeDe, we're not going to relive that. That was 2 years ago. We got to let that go.
And yet,
let that hurt go, honey.
Yesterday, but I have to say, I learned so much. I think as we do on every campaign, right?
Yeah.
Like we're coming in as experts on, you know, with our particular experience and POV, and you know, I've been at this just from a holistic marketing and PR perspective for a very long time. But each time I work on a campaign, particularly a campaign like us and Queen and Slim, I learned so much. I really learned so much on both of those campaigns, especially from these super amazing, talented filmmakers and of course, marketers behind you know, the campaign. Because again, it's very much a collective effort. But you know, it does start with that really just amazing. I'm trying to find another word for the vision that these filmmakers have, which is why I have so much love and respect for Jordan and obviously Lena and Melina. And there's a host of other Black filmmakers, producers, directors, writers, because again, it is a very much a collaborative process. Because I learned so much just from that vision and them having a voice in how the film is marketed.
Right.
And being able to tap into, like I would say for Queen and Slim, you know, we're past the brainstorming process. We're like, where are those really big beats, right? It's important when you're laying, and again, the campaign is a moving, breathing thing. Hopefully at this time you've got your publicity strategy down, you know what your messaging is, you know what your audience is, you know who your audience is. And really, I think there's one of the things I did learn on, I think us, but particularly Queen and Slim, is doubling down on that audience. It wasn't like this film is necessarily for everybody. Our core audience, they showed up and they showed out. Great weekend, and then it continued to grow. That's my favorite part about this story. And your filmmakers were open to pushing it to continue to grow, to continue to get it out to audiences. And it was just so amazing to see, because I'm going to just fast forward through a couple of things that usually when the movie opens, it's a wrap for theatrical. That opening weekend, you could have a second week push.
Yeah, but that's it. But it's on to the next after that.
It's on to the next movie. And often you're opening multiple movies at the same time or in conjunction, you know, with a 2-week break or a month break or whatever. And so just seeing that was like really, really compelling. I mean, we've also had the opportunity, and I think it's different when it's TV and episodic, but we've had the opportunity to work on some really great TV content. Mine most recently was the show Southside with Comedy Central. And man, it was again, I learned so much on that campaign. I think I gave a lot, probably my heart and soul at the time, because I just meeting.
If you get so invested in just like, you're like, I want this to succeed, so I'm going to literally give my all. Like to make sure
meeting the creators, Bashir and Diallo, I was just so enamored with how creative and brilliant and they double down on if you haven't seen Southside, please see it. It is literally one of the funniest TV shows I've ever seen. I'm not from Chicago.
Comedy Central, right?
Yes, Comedy Central. But they also did Sherman Showcase for IFC, which is also just it's such a funny variety show. And I think it would seem like these creators are, you know, overnight successes, but they're not. And so learning their story and getting their super fresh perspective, and also the fact that like we couldn't lean into on these campaigns of marketing this movie, I'm sorry, this TV show based on their social media reach, right? Because one of them wasn't even on social media, and I don't think he is now. So we really had to find, again, the entry point, the audience. How are we getting the story out to the audience that it's for? And also making it, somewhat broad. And I think that collectively we did by really targeting those Black and African American outlets, and to tell these really rich, vibrant, very authentic stories. And that's the thing about that show. The other thing that we did, and you know how we love to go to an event or a festival, we went to NABJ in Miami, and we took them there and set them up for really a press call, photo ops, a 2-episode screening, when there's so much competing content involved. Again, that could be its own episode, but yeah, it really is just taking like how events and conferences and summits, especially related to Black people, that are targeting us, but be it NABJ, be it Essence, be it, where else did we go? ABFF, shout out to ABFF, shout out to-
And just so people know, for people who are listening, like NABJ is the National Association of Black Journalists, which is a great organization that's been around for many years, but they have a convention every year. And ABFF is the American Black Film Festival, founded by Jeff Friday, Nicole Friday, typically held in Miami every year. Those are things that we like, that's our vacation every year, DeDe. Like, we would go to ABFF and have a great time in Miami, and NABJ is in a different city every year. But obviously over the last few years, both of them had to have converted to doing virtual, but definitely both are good platforms to promoting your films and promoting TV shows and things like that. Hence why you guys took them to those 2 festivals for that particular TV show.
Absolutely. So, and that even goes down to when we're, talking about what makes a really good marketing campaign, but multicultural in particular, is after you've identified your audience, you've got to find out where they are.
Where they are, and take them, take your content there. Yeah.
You've got to take your content there. And it's not, digital is a huge part of that, right? So, because everyone's so digitally connected, and you've got to be reaching them at multiple touch points, right? So that's where outdoor comes in. And people don't realize how huge outdoor is. It's still very, very important.
Very, very important. Yeah.
Radio, right? Your paid media, and then your earned media, which is what we typically do, is the earned media. But it's always in conjunction with what's happening on the paid side as well.
Right.
And so you're getting your audience at multiple touch points. So again, just going back to, because that's a very poignant recent experience, I would like to just talk a little bit about how you and the Universal Multicultural Marketing team double down on like the Us First campaign, the infamous and legendary Us First campaign, and taking it to the places you took it, and also building what you built.
The crazy part about that was there was always like the question.
First of all, tell the people what the Us First.
I am. Starting at the beginning, our president of marketing was always like, "What is our Black moment on us? We got to have a Black moment. We got to have a Black moment," which we had already been thinking about and what that could be, because we saw the film. We saw, we knew that it was this. Jordan obviously wrote it and directed it. We saw the little Howard nugget in there from his sweatshirt. We saw this beautiful black family together with their mom and dad protecting their 2 kids. Like, there were so many amazing elements. And then it was basically.
In 1 second, they weren't just a beautiful Black family. They were a beautiful dark-skinned Black family.
Then there's that. Yes, 100%. So we were like, my team and I were just like, we gotta figure this out. We gotta throw some things up and figure out what our Black moment is. And this was Jordan's 2nd film. So there was like that anticipation, and then like, what is it going to be? What's happening? So everyone had their own we dropped that trailer. So everyone was like speculating on what it was going to be giving. And we had already committed to premiering at South by Southwest. And I was like, well, won't we just screen the movie in conjunction with South by Southwest and just screen it in really Black cities and just happy? It was that simple. I was like, we should just send it. So literally, I'm like, I thought about this, and I told my two colleagues, Jesse and Danny, who are the director of media and director of creative. And I was like, what do you guys think about that? So like, I literally went around the office getting endorsements from everyone, and I would like make my way up to like Amanda Sterling, who was a publicity lead. She's the SVP. And I talked to Megan Bendis, who's the EVP. And I was like, let me tell Fabian, because I'm like, Fabian, my boss, is like, I got Megan and Amanda on board now. And I'm like, we're going to do this. We're going to make this cool. Megan had checked in with South by. They're like, oh, no, there's no problem doing that. We can still do it together. And then we presented it to Michael Moses and Dwight Keynes, who are our presidents of marketing. And the idea was created to do us first, and screen the movie for the first time for Black audiences in Atlanta, New York, and LA. And simultaneously in these different cities, making it fun. So we had a little party and drinks and food and created custom gifts for everyone to attend. We had the who's who of Atlanta, New York, and LA there. Like, it was a moment. And Black Twitter blew up on that moment. Like, it was just a thing of things. And it was such a great opportunity and great conversation, because we wanted to take it outside of South by and just make sure that people outside of whoever was there in Austin could still see the movie and have access to the movie. And it just really, it resonated so much. And it was so much conversation. DeDe, I was up to what time in the morning doing that recap? Like, it was at least at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, still pulling social media grabs and screen grabs and links and things like that. But it was an amazing career highlight for myself, to be able to see that through from start to finish. And again, getting so many Black personalities and celebrities and influencers and just Black Twitter voices to just endorse it and say that this was great and this was genius and this was needle moving and this is what it's about. This is what multicultural is. And you know, I've heard from other colleagues that this still comes up from a studio perspective
all the time.
And again, it's not a crazy idea. It's like, it's just like, just show it. Let's just show it simultaneously to Black audience. That literally is the words I used, and I was like, and it snowballed and rolled into such an amazing tactic for the film.
It also was. It all fell into place because of the title of the movie.
Yeah,
it just completely.
It had a lot of things going for it. It made it just work.
It was synergistic. It was thoughtful. It was not forced. That's the other thing. It was thoughtful and very authentic. And I think that's the thing, again, when you're marketing to really any audience, but specifically multicultural, be it Black, our AAAPI audiences, our Hispanic, Latino, Latinx. I'm going to throw it all in there because I know various people prefer various things.
Right.
That how are we speaking to these audiences authentically? And again, tapping into those nuggets within the movie, tapping into your talent, your even below the line, what's happening in the zeitgeist. I think we've obviously seen in the past few years that we have been much more vocal as a community about expecting to see ourselves more on screen,
right.
Expecting to be telling our own stories, expecting to have Black representation in those marketing rooms, in the filmmaker meetings, all the things that, again, totally separate podcast. And a lot of that is happening because the creators have value and they have power. Why? Because our content makes money, right? And we saw from that McKinsey report that it's something like a $10 billion deficit in the studio system that they're missing out on by not really robustly integrating multiculturalism into the content. And so I think that's one of the rewarding things about our jobs that we talk about all the time, is that our purview, our point of view, our passion, our history, as varied as it is, we're able to weigh in on a lot of these narratives and ideally help from, you know, certain missteps that may happen.
Yeah.
And that's another reason it's so important to just have us not just in the room on the marketing side, but you have these authentic voices and creators from the beginning.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so,
but you know, even if you do have it on both sides, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to, it's going to still hit right. You know what I mean? Because because people see things very differently. You know what I mean? But I think it feels a little bit more safer or a little bit more comfortable to like have, again, a diverse marketing room, a diverse creative room, etc. Just so you know, like there will be missteps. People will get things wrong, and that's fine. That's what life is about. And there's no real way of, you know, protecting that or not doing that or leaning heavily into this or that. But it's like still being able to learn from those mistakes, I think is the key to that. It's like, well, we did that and we got this, but so like, what if we did something differently, and what would that result look like? I think is a very, very important key to learning for everyone, for marketers and creatives.
It is, and we're still learning.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a continuous learning process.
It really is. As social media continues to evolve, and we're seeing that while there may be sensitivity, and listen, there's a lot of sensitivity to a lot of things that, like, to be quite honest, as a Gen Xer, I wouldn't have known to be sensitive to, because it was just a different time. So right. I'm even learning in that process and being, you know, again, I mean, we may wake up Black and go to sleep Black, and we have Black parents and, you know, Black friends. We have a lot of diverse friends, but we're still learning things about our community and how to connect in ways that speak authentically to certain experiences that we just don't have.
Yeah. Right? And I always say, like, I'm not the spokesperson for everyone Black. I can't be, because I don't have that experience. I'm the spokesperson for how Jonathan feels growing up in the South, growing up with two parents, growing up the way that I grew up. I'm only going to speak to that and how I feel about that. And the same for you as well. So it's like, I can't tell you how, if someone in Brooklyn is going to respond to something that I may feel like it's fine. I don't know. I'm just using my best interest and my best thought mind to say, like, okay, yes, I think that, I don't think there's a big issue there, but I think maybe there's a big issue here. But I could be completely wrong.
Right. And I think it's always having that caveat too.
Yeah.
And I think as we close on this particular topic, and we did do sort of a broad overview on like this on multicultural marketing, I think that the takeaway that I would like to share is, as marketers in general, right? You never stop learning, reading, consuming podcasts, content, like articles. You never stop.
You're constantly learning and absorbing everything around you. You have to be a good marketer.
Completely. And as it's being a little bit like an explorer, you know, someone who's always inquisitive and digs a little bit deeper maybe than the average bear. I will say that I have been using my nephews and nieces who are in their early 20s, some in college, you know, some out, and I have and I'm just like, what are you reading? What do you listen to? Would you go see this? And it's like an informal focus group. And man, I've learned so much. And I will say, one of them gave me the 85 South show. I was not watching 85 South like that. Of course, I had a sense of like who they were, and I knew the Wildin' Out and like all of that. And guess what? You know, it really helped in, you know, for a campaign that we were working. We didn't end up working for them, but the point is I knew I was on the right path by thinking about their viability. So again, just opening yourself up to the process of discovery and learning, and just, again, just immersing yourself in culture, immersing yourself in stories. And I think that's one of the things that I know I love so much, and we know you love it too.
100%. And I think too, I just think it's so important because I think there is still a lot to digest. I don't think it's about me. Like, I think you knowing about the 85 South show is like, oh my God, that's a good nugget for this particular audience. So I'm gonna just file that in the back of my head for something. And I think that's what it's about. It's about like filing those moments and filing those cultural, very specific moments that hit certain audiences, filing that and just saying when the need does come up for you to do something that skews this young or with these kind of hosts or comedic or whatever it is, you're like, oh my God, I got that. I got the perfect thing that we can partner with them on, and it'll still be in their authentic voice and still resonate with the audience that we're targeting for the film. So I love that, and I think it's just, again, it's a constant just sponge of just absorbing as much as you can, and again, fouling it where you need to foul it at.
100%. I've got so many notes in my phone of little things I've seen.
Yeah.
And
I think another thing too is like, I think we both are really good about knowing, especially we're working at studios, like knowing what our competitors are doing as well in the space, like seeing what Netflix has done or looking what they did on Ma Rainey and on Malcolm and Marie and Jingle Jangle and things like that. Just looking at their very specific multicultural campaigns and like, wow, like they did this, and this. And it's like, okay, just good to know that that's a potential opportunity for down the road, or how do I make it feel a little bit different from what they did? So just also like being knowledgeable about what other studios and streamers and things like that are doing too is really key as well.
There's so much to give, and there's so much to learn. And, you know, thank goodness theatrical is on its way back, and we get to
on its way back. Yes.
More. So shout out to the movie-going experience. Cheers to that. Cheers.
I always feel like I drink more to you during our episodes because I'm like, started here and then I'm here. It's just, I'll take it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
To being Black on the
scene. Bye, everybody.
Till next week.
Thanks for joining us for episode 6 of Black on the Scene, our love letter to Black entertainment.
Well, this was our first episode, but definitely not the last, where we discuss multicultural marketing. And honestly, John, I could have talked about this for at least another 8 hours.
Exactly, DeDe. 8 hours, 10 hours. We could go all day, every day. So make sure you guys stay tuned, as there'll be more episodes to come, and maybe even some special guests dropping in as well. Check back each week as we continue releasing new episodes of Black on the Scene, and don't forget to subscribe, leave us a rating, and make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Black on the Scene. BLK on the Scene, SCENE. Thanks, guys.